Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everyone you trust has been acting. Your friends, your neighbors, and even your own reality is scripted. That's the moment Truman faces in the Truman Show. And what makes it terrifying isn't just a deception, it's how real the trust felt. But here's the question. If trust can feel real even when it isn't, then what actually makes it real? My name is Mark, and that's the idea I want to explore with you all today. Most of us don't question trust. We assume it's there, that things will work and people will show up. And because of that, we actually rarely seem to notice it. We only seem to notice it when it starts to break. And when it does, we don't just realize it's gone, we realize that it was actually the very thing holding everything together. Trust. It doesn't break in one dramatic moment. No, it doesn't. It breaks quietly, gradually, not all at once, but through small decisions we choose to ignore. A promise not kept, efforts not returned, or even apologies that don't change anything. We often treat connection as optional, but without it, people don't just feel alone, they start to lose their sense of direction. Connection is what people connection is what people get because it gives them a sense of belonging. It shapes how we see others and how we see ourselves. Research, including findings from the WHO, or World Health Organization, shows that strong social connections are linked to 1. Greater mental health, 2. Greater resilience, and 3. Longer life expectancy. This is often described as social support. The idea that we don't just feel better when our connections are strong, but it gives us access to better help, advice, and resources we would not have on our own. When connection deepens, people start and tend to rely more on each other. They share their problems, ask for help, and trust that the other party will show up for them. Even in everyday moments, we actually don't realize how much we rely on connection. Borrowing notes when we miss a class, or asking advice and getting help when we don't understand something. And despite all of that, despite how important connection is, we rarely still seem not to notice it. We treat it as something optional, assuming that it will stay, rather than treating it as something constant. Let me rephrase that. But rather than treating it as something that needs to be maintained. Connection may start with interaction. Yes, sure, but that alone doesn't sustain itself. Without trust, connection cannot deepen no matter how much time, effort, or energy is inserted. When trust is present, people don't just stop second-guessing themselves. They become more open. They start to rely on each other more. And they take social risks without the constant fear of being negatively judged. Amy Edmondson, a researcher from Harvard, described this as psychological safety, the ability to take interpersonal risks without the constant fear of being negatively judged. Her work shows a consistent pattern. When people feel safe, they open up. But it isn't always easy to maintain, especially in difficult situations when there is outside factors acting upon it, like uncertainty or even pressure. People tend to become more cautious. Without trust, even frequent interactions does not create real connection. You can talk to someone every day, but still feel remain surface level, because one of you is deciding to hold back. A strong example of this is the 2008 USA men's Olympic basketball team. This is referred to as the Redeem Team. Why? Because last Olympics, they were able to make it to the final, but they didn't win it. They got second. So this is their chance to get gold. And despite having all these elite players like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, etc., they had one major issue. They were lacking trust. But that changed, but not through one big moment, but through small, consistent actions. Showing up, taking accountability of their wrongdoings, putting the team before themselves. And over time, those small patterns build trust, which led this team to play as one whole and to achieve their goal of winning the Olympic gold medal. So as you see, skill wasn't just the thing that determined the outcome, but it was trust built over time. People think they break trust in big moments, but actually, they break trust in moments they think don't matter. I want to ask you this. Can you ever truly know someone, or only the version they choose to show you? Because if you can't really know someone, let me rephrase that. Connection only starts and is only built when people open up. And when that happens, something is introduced, which is called risk. Trust requires vulnerability, and vulnerability means accepting uncertainty. Even in that fear doesn't go away. It actually builds, especially when people have been in that situation before. When people have been betrayed, they start to hesitate. And once they find themselves in that same situation, they will start to withdraw. They hesitate, overthink, and do anything to avoid getting hurt. And ironically, I've experienced this myself. I've told a friend a very personal secret, and I trusted him to, well, of course, keep it. But however, a few days later, while I was walking around the hallway, I heard a group of friends talking about it. Well, not to me, but casually and like it didn't matter. That made me upset, of course, and I went to confront my friend. He apologized, but something in me changed. I hesitated more. I felt, well, more distant, not because I wanted to, but because I understood the cost of trusting someone. In that moment, something shifts. Trust doesn't disappear. No, it actually changes. And the person who got hurt has to decide whether to take that risk again. And the question is no longer, can others be trusted, but it's whether is connection worth the risk. Rebuilding trust is not instant. It's slow and uncertain. So the question becomes, can trust be ever fully restored once it's broken? Because if trust can be fully restored once it's broken, then protecting yourself feels like the better option. When you protect yourself, you avoid pain, you avoid getting hurt. It sounds smart, it feels safe. However, that safety protects you from pain, but it also protects you from being fully known. And over time, you will see these patterns emerging up. That your conversations will still be surface level. That your relationships feel safe but distant. And you can still be surrounded in a room full of people, but still feel alone. Over time, that distance protects you from being well known by others. On the other hand, you can choose to, well, open up. And when you do, you create the possibility of something deeper. You allow yourself to be known, to be seen more clearly, and you also let yourself rely on others. And when that happens, it creates understanding, support, and a sense of belonging. So, here's a dilemma. You either protect yourself, avoid the pain, and limit your connections, or take that risk and create the possibility of something deeper, knowing it's never guaranteed. At what point do you stop trusting others and start protecting yourself? Because once you cross that line, it becomes harder to go back. Well, the answer isn't choosing between safety or risk. It's actually managing trust over time. Trust isn't built through words. It's built through what people consistently do. Research in behavioral psychology, including habit formations from Wendy Wood, shows that most of our daily actions are actually habitual, meaning that people don't just judge trust based on what someone does once or twice, but actually judge it based on what someone does consistently over time. And trust is never meant to be easy, and hard moments reveal trust. It builds through moments where it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, easy to avoid, and in moments where people still choose to show up, even though it feels wrong or impossible. Managing trust means paying attention to those patterns. Are people reliable? Do their actions match their words? Do they take accountability when they're wrong? Do they respect boundaries or cross it when it's convenient? Because we think that trust is about others, but it actually isn't. The problem isn't that other people are not reliable, but is that we don't trust ourselves to do better. And this doesn't just apply to others, it also applies to yourself. Self-trust is just as important. When you repeatedly break promises to yourself, something in you changes. It shifts. You stop trusting your own decisions. And when that happens, it becomes harder for you to take any risk at all. So, here's the idea I want to leave you with. Self-trust determines how high you aim. Trust in others determines how far you can go. Trust, it doesn't break in one dramatic moment. It fades through small things we ignore, and it's built the same way. So maybe the goal isn't to fix trust when it's broken, but maybe the goal is to recognize it while it's still there. And whenever you find yourself in the dilemma of choosing to whether let me rephrase that. So whenever you find yourself in the dilemma of choosing whether to protect yourself or take the risk, please keep this in mind. When you protect yourself, you avoid getting hurt. But that also protects you from being fully known. And real connection has never been built without taking that risk. In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.